Hello, everyone. This is Anthony with the Dragons of Victory. I want to read a post I made on the channel yesterday and then unpack it a bit. I'll sort of go into more depth about it. So I wrote, Tradcath influencers are currently losing their minds because Pope Leo said that the death penalty is wrong. What kind of person gets angry at that? Someone whose ideology and worldview are rooted in violence and chaos, that's who. 99.9% of tradcaths online clearly have chaotic minds as they produce nothing but chaotic content, and they want to defend the death penalty because they literally want to kill you if you attack their beliefs or don't live like them in every last detail. The early church executed heretics, and they want that back. Many of them say so explicitly. There are many good and decent tradcaths, but they are good and decent in spite of what they believe, or in spite of what they belong to, not because of it. And I want to go deeper into that last point because it's a very important thing to bring up here. Um, Traditional Catholic people, a lot of them, maybe the majority of them, excluding across the board, pretty much excluding those who decide to defend it online, be tradcath influencers, get into the fight, get into the battle, as they say, be a part of the church militant. Most people don't, I think, have that disposition. Most people aren't interested in that, and um, I'm not interested in the counter fight or battle, as I've said many times before, but it's just too important to me at the moment, the way I feel, to not continue on in some way, as small or as as less frequently as I might be doing it now, because I've definitely taken a much needed step back, a much needed sort of slower pace in all of this, and which was definitely needed because you know, you can't maintain your sanity, remaining in the traditional Catholic world your entire life, and and on the reverse side, you definitely can't maintain it constantly steeped in their rhetoric and constantly listening to them. I said this before, but I still do. I still keep myself plugged in to a degree to their discourse and yesterday, I mean, it always, that you know to one degree or another, it's always irritating, it's always upsetting, the things they say, the things they advocate for, but something about the content I reviewed yesterday was just particularly saddening. I felt compelled to make that post because of it, and I feel compelled right now to sort of speak more about what was so saddening about it. Again, the tried to emphasize that last statement that the 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 big families in these churches, the average traditional Catholic you'll meet is not a violent person. Is not a person of a person who would want to do you harm if you don't think like them, if you don't believe like them. But like I said, that is despite what they're part of. And that could apply to many other groups as well, many other religions as well, because as you have, have seen, if you are plugged into the world of the online tradcath influencer world, their latest kerfuffle, the latest thing putting their hair on fire, freaking them out, is what Pope Leo said, which is just a reiteration of what Pope Francis said, and what is now officially in the Catholic Catechism, Pope Leo condemned the death penalty. He said it's wrong. And me personally, I am I am against the death penalty, but there are certain instances where, I mean, certainly one specific example was the Parkland shooter. Uh, when I watched the impact statements, all the family members of his victims delivered to him when he was spared the death penalty at the end of his trial, granted life imprisonment instead. Um, the sheer depravity and cruelty of his actions and the daily pain, unimaginable pain these parents and siblings go through every day as a result of that. When I heard them advocate or decry that he was not being put to death, the Parkland shooter, and wishing for prisoners the in the jail he's being sent in the prison he's being sent to finish the job and to kill him, hoping for that. I could not in any way on a personal level uh, disagree with that or disagree with them. I got it. I completely got it. But at the same time, just simply from a logic a you know not that you know not that even those emotions aren't understandable, but just on a purely principled level, I can't be in favor of the death penalty because the for many reasons it's just it whatever visceral sense of justice it satisfies and that it would satisfy for those family members, and however understandable that might be, on the basic principled level, I just can't defend it, and I don't think it can be defended. It's just simply wrong. And the Tradcath influencers now are losing their shit because Leo said it was wrong, and many of them, and what made me so sad about their response to that is how many of them brought up the early church's practices of executing heretics. Giordano Bruno is a perfect example of that. They want that back. What that means, I realized as I'm listening to them, is that they want me dead, essentially. You might think that that's a bit unhinged to say that that's a like, okay, whoa, you're taking their statements a bit too far here, but they've said it explicitly, many of them. I don't know if I used to, link uh videos, so you could go through and so I could prove my case that these people are really saying this. I don't know if I'll do that for this one, but I mean, you can't miss it. You can't miss people like Michael Hitchborn who was on that Joe McClane show. He's one example that comes to mind I can think of someone who was, springing up that, in his defense of the death penalty, why it's needed, he went back to he talked to I think they talked about, you know, why why it's why it's right or just in a secular sense, but then getting into the church's history, not just him, so many people defending the practice of murdering heretics because in their worldview, it's almost worse. It is worse to be a blasphemer, to be a heretic, to be an apostate, than it is to be a murderer, because you could damn destroy someone's soul as opposed to destroying their body. And of course, when you when you live in a world where you're so focused on the soul and that's all you think about and where what your soul's going to go, this intangible, ethereal, probably not real thing, you end up disregarding your body to the point of self-abuse. Exactly what was done to me at the hands of the traditional Catholic priests. I was told to abuse my body in many different ways to save my soul. And what's sad and scary about that world, and again, like I've said in like my previous video, it's not going to happen. They're not going to gain power. Traditional Catholics aren't. The social reign of Christ the King, from their standpoint, is a joke. It's never going to happen. But to understand that this system, not necessarily the people, the influencers, yes, because the influencers online have to really familiarize themselves with the system, with old church teachings in order to defend it. The system of traditional Catholicism wants to kill you for leaving them or disagreeing with them because the soul is more important than the body. So in executing heretics is justified and good. And a lot of the influencers yesterday and some today couched it with all this language of like, people, this is a touchy subject. I know people don't want to hear about this as if they're, you know, I don't know, as if they're not talking about taking people's life, about for the crime of disagreement, for the crime of wrong think and wrong speech. They one thing to important thing to keep in mind is that any sort of um, and I'm not even what you would necessarily call a patriot. Country's got a this country's got a lot of problems, but the principles that but a lot of the principles that founded this country are beautiful. Like separation of church and state is beautiful, and freedom of speech is beautiful. It can get ugly and messy in practice, but it's a beautiful concept. It's a beautiful principle, and a lot of them will explicitly say that they call it Americanism. They hate that. They want to go back to a monarchy. They want to, you know, impose. They hate separation of church and state. So remember to call bullshit on any traditional Catholic also claiming to be a patriot, a good American, whatever. It's a joke and a farce, and many of them will admit that. But I just want to say this to any hardcore traditional Catholics watching, any traditional Catholic influencers watching who might hate watch me. You've proved to me yesterday that if you had your way, if the social reign of Christ the King happened and your rule was imposed, you would, I would be, my head would be on the chopping block for being an apostate, for being a heretic, for being a blasphemer or whatever. And as exhausting as the work of speaking out against you gets, as soul crushing as it gets, quote unquote soul crushing, I keep reminding myself of the importance of maintaining, however small, however weak, however effective or ineffective, simply maintaining my voice in opposition to you, not opposition to a lot of the a lot of the good traditional Catholics I know and am related to who wouldn't execute me or people like me if they took control. That's despite um that's despite what they belong to. I think it's based on an incomplete understanding of what they belong to. But I think that traditional Catholic influencers despite their at each other's throats and back and disagreements and endless infighting, because it's an illogical system, and that can only breed chaos. And the internet breeds chaos just by existing, but certain communities online are more healthier and functional than others, and the most dysfunctional ones are that way because the insanity of what they believe is amplified by the internet and made more chaotic by the internet. It's it it's so important for all of us who were part of this group or understand how dangerous the the group of traditional Catholic the structure of traditional Catholicism is. It's moments like realizing, like I did yesterday, that if they had their way, they would I would be killed. I'd be martyred, right? I'd be martyred to their death cult, their you know their world where death is all they think about and suffering is all they think about. It was My life has improved so much by leaving, and it would improve, and my life would improve a lot more if I completely disconnected from this whole thing, and I will someday. For the time being, it's just we can't lose sight of how of how destructive this thing is, and how we can't let that go. We can't let that just slide away into the background of our lives as much as we would like to sometimes. In whatever way, in whatever small way, we need to keep hammering this. We need to keep reminding people and ourselves that that these people have no business, no place in our lives, no place in anyone's life. Uh, so that's all I have for now. Nice and happy little cheery little video there. But if I could end on a positive note, the positive note is this again to remind ourselves that like I said in my last video, a house divided against itself cannot stand. And their constant dysfunction and constant inner destruction means that they will never achieve what they want. There's not going to be any uh, Catholic Church or traditional Catholic uh, uh, empire that rises up and starts executing heretics. It's not going to happen. So that's something we can take consolation in and also remind ourselves of. But the people who want that, who dream of that world, who imagine that world, who that would be their paradise if that would happen, we can't let up on them. We can't let the importance of resisting them, uh, we can't let the importance of that slip away from us. So thank you for listening. Hope you have a great rest of your day, night, whenever you're watching this, and I hope you fly away to victory. Take care.